Hey guys, this is Kaz. I'm trying to do a new video for you guys today, or a new style of video. Basically, my plan is to watch this Algeth'ar Academy, which you guys have already seen. Perhaps I've already posted it, but try to run through, watch it at 1x speed, kind of watch it together, and I'll try to point out things I notice about my own play or things that may be helpful to yours. This is my first time doing one of these, so it's maybe scuffed. I'm trying to do it all, in one take, just as I go, what I see. The talents are in the description, as they should be for every video. And I don't really expect to cover any sort of rotation stuff unless it's something maybe I notice on the fly. But, there's obviously a ton of rotation guides for evokers, but this is kind of just how I play a 21. This is mostly a pug. The tank is the tank I usually run with. But, I'm far from an expert or anything of the sort, but it might help to kind of see my thought process as I run through the dungeon, and maybe you could apply it to your own keys. And just before we start, since the video starts with the key already locked in, we're already counting down to start, the only thing I would flag right here is you usually want to tip the scales before the pull, before the key timer actually goes in, because that'll let you have a fully empowered fire breath for not your first global, but the first fire breath you cast in the dungeon will be empowered. And as you can see in the video already, my tip the scales is off cooldown, even though I have the buff. So as you'll see in the first pull, it lets you sort of use double max rank and power spells back to back. We're just going to start off here. Just going to grab the haste buff and then go head over to the bridge, wait for other people. This video did not yet have the weak aura at the bottom that lists my stats, but it's in my other videos, and I have with the embellishment 100% mastery, so I just grabbed the 5% haste because I like playing with more haste, and haste is really good.
Indeed. Come with us. It should only take a moment.
So here I would usually start Azure striking a bit just to get some charge blast stacks for the first for the Dragon's Rage, but I didn't. I just let the tank group them up. I actually made a mistake right away from what I was talking about earlier, which was max rank fire breath into tip the scales again, because you have the spell cooldown even though you're carrying the buff for max rank Eternity Surge. What I did was I just max rank I pressed tip the scales before max ranking the fire breath because I just muscle memory forgot I had the buff. So as you can see, I max rank fire breath instantly, but then only cast a 1 rank Eternity Surge. Here we got greedy with bursting, which is fine. So that first pull is just basic burst, basic rotation, maximize number of pyres. A small tip, I guess, is just obviously if you play Evoker, you can extend your Dragon's Rage by consuming Essence Burst stacks on those spells. One thing I've trying to get better at that I used to sort of try to force too much is extending Dragon's Rage when there's no need to. If you have, if your Dragon's Breath's gonna run out about when the mobs are gonna die, you don't need to work really hard to extend it, so just maximize the amount of pyre they're putting out, even if they're not using up Essence Burst charges. Here I was trying to line of sight the Ravager here so that he doesn't move, so it's easier for the whole group to keep DPSing him. I went into melee. I think I was maybe thinking about knocking up, but the healer got the charge away, so it didn't matter. Again, standard rotation. You Azure strike it 3+ targets, unless you have a burnout proc with leaping flames proc on your burnouts. Just try to get fire breath down on as many mobs as possible. I've been trying to do higher empower rank fire breaths at the beginning, since the mobs are higher health, and when you have multiple mobs, you're going to be pyring / Azure striking anyway. You're not really going to be disintegrating, so you don't need the fire breath dot to be on there for the extra ticks of the dot with disintegrate. And around here, again, the rotation stuff is, the Evoker is pretty straightforward. You can look up the rotation. The only thing I start thinking about here that I think might be helpful is basically cooldown management. We're getting near the end of the pack. You saw Dragon's Rage come up. I don't Fire Breath or Ordinary Surge because I want to have it up for the initial burst in the next pull.
Please excuse the mess.
We're going to pull these two groups on the sides. I try to look for an early interrupt, I believe. I think I also... I may do a roar. I do a roar here to help with the CC, and then I start my combo, which was Dragon's Rage straight into max range Fire Breath with tips the scales, and then manually max range Extraordinary Surge. Sigil of Silence lasted, I believe it's 12 seconds with the buff from Roar, which is really good on Fortified weeks. I don't really take Roar on Tyrannical weeks because the trash, at least at the level I do, kind of dies, kind of falls over really easily. And again, the mobs are getting low. Fire Breath came off cooldown. Fire Breath is obviously extending our Dragon's Rage, which is not critical to this pull, but maybe, depending on how things lined up, if I could have extended it into the next pull, that might have been something to think about, but I didn't, so it doesn't really matter. And on 21 Fortified, obviously this will vary by key level, by group composition, and how much damage your group does, but usually I'm looking to kind of Dragon's Rage one pack, no 0 cooldown the next pack, Dragon's Rage the next pack. So here I just Dragon's Rage that pack of 2. Well, I won't have it for this, but I expect to have it up at the beginning of the boss fight. Using knockback, I believe I tried to go in for a knockup, and my knockup was actually on cooldown, so I sort of was standing there hitting the button. Something you might notice throughout the run, and because I'm kind of trying to talk through it, and this is frankly my first time doing one of these, I might miss, but you'll see me when I have, at least visually on my interface, and both the weak R essences and the just base UI essences, it'll say I have enough charges to cast Disintegrate. So sometimes you'll see me stop and just be kind of spamming a button. It's Disintegrate, it's not casting, I'm annoyed it's not casting. They recently released I think it was a hotfix. I forget when. A few days ago, they said they had fixed it. They haven't. Unless I misunderstood what they said they fixed. They haven't fixed it. It shows you that you can cast Disintegrate, but then Disintegrate won't go off. Super annoying. Just gotta wait for them to actually fix it. I Dragon's Rage here at the beginning of the boss fight. Really from a Mythic Plus perspective, I'm just trying to get as many Dragon's Rage off across the whole dungeon. Obviously, if you're thinking in raid or in a boss fight, if you were much more knowledgeable about timers, you technically want a Dragon's Rage. I guess not right on pull, because Dragon's Rage is gonna make all your spells benefit fully from your mastery, Giant Killer, or Giant Killer. So it'll. There, I feel I missed extending the Dragon's Rage, which is an issue probably from dropping off the bomb. And so, if we were talking about a single boss fight, or if you were very comfortable with timers and knew that, okay, after this boss we're gonna have like 15 seconds of walking time, you could really min-max it to where you're using Dragon Rage a little later. But honestly, I just pop it at the beginning of the fight, just because across the whole dungeon, if I just pop it as early as possible, well, in a pull that's worth it, I will get the most uses out of it. I don't know the timings well enough to manage it more than that. And obviously, if you have lust, you want to pop it with it without even worrying about the whole maximizing mastery benefits. That's pretty standard. I think something here which you may or may not have encountered in your own runs is there is a potential for, here, the healer just said in chat, you're trying to desync a combo that can happen later, which is Mana Bomb straight into Arcane Fissure, and it does happen to us right when the boss is about to die. I believe I even die from it, and it's pretty nasty. So I usually sort of follow the tank guidance on when to let an orb through, and honestly just let them decide to let the orb through. I don't really mess with it too much, but here you saw Arcane Fissure. I probably could have lived if I just potted. I mean, I was low, but maybe a pot, Emerald Blossom early if I had noticed it was happening. So it's a misplay, but it's okay. The boss died right away anyway. So here's another one of those decisions, right? I have Dragon's Rage up. This is a pack of 4. We've been sort of changing it up, what we pulled during this week. Obviously, live now we're on Tyrannical, but this is a Fortified key. And so I wasn't sure how big the next pull would be. And again, I'm just trying to maximize across. I'm thinking about the whole run. How many Dragon's Rages can I get off that are going to be a good return on the cooldown? Pack of 4 is not ideal, but it's sort of a guessing game. You know, if all 3 of us blow everything. I mean, an Outlaw Rogue is basically pretty steady damage across all packs, but if the Paladin and I sort of blow everything on 4 mobs, that's probably a misplay as a group, because if we're going to do a bigger pull right here, it would certainly have been more valuable for us to hold cooldowns for it. But again, we're sort of not entirely consistent on how many mobs we pulled run to run here, so I just decided to send on the last one. Again, I'm not assigning the Ravager so that he stays still for Rift Breath. And generally playing this pull pretty, I call this kind of like a relaxing pull, or a catch-up pull, where you kind of just, you know, catch your breath. You don't have too much to do when you're not Dragon's Rage blasting. Our spells are very slow, very long cooldown, not too demanding on sort of APM, especially outside Dragon's Rage. So just trying to play it really slow and make sure I line aside all the breaths so my team can do damage, since they're better positioned to at the moment. And just, you know, make sure these mobs all hopefully die sort of evenly with the big Ravager. Purely for efficiency, obviously there's no bolstering or anything like that, so it doesn't really matter when they die. But
Too far away.
theoretically, if you're just pure OEing with all the mobs at the same time, that was an efficient use of damage.
Too far
Here
away.
I see we're going to join these. We have 4 and it's 3 new. This seems like a pretty good place to Dragon's Rage, so assuming I do. I decided to pot it too, just because there's not a good sort of big pull coming up. The Eagles have a lot of mobs, but the little ones die really quickly, so I just kind of wanted to delete this pack. It looks like other people had the same idea. Trying to hold on to Thundering a little bit. It's always a little scary with pugs, just because you don't know how they like to clear. And here, look, I have 5 seconds left on Dragon's Rage, so that was kind of a moment where we all just bursted it, and it wasn't really inefficient, because this mob is a very inefficient mob just by design. He has, gosh, almost 14 million health or more, and you just have to single target him. There's nothing else you can pull into him, as far as I know. So it's okay that the last Dragon's Rage was a little bit of a waste, as in I had 5 seconds on it and could have certainly extended it more. The mobs just died even faster than I anticipated, but it's no big deal, because in this instance, he is not a better target for it. There's not really much to say about this mob. Unfortunately, with our 25-yard range, we can't just sit outside the the total diameter of the swirly. We kind of have to play inside and LOS on the pillars. I've been getting really trolled by these tornadoes recently, or just been bad at noticing them, so I've had to play them really carefully, which is why you notice here I'm kind of moving exaggerated a little. I forgot to turn use Church for a while. It's been off cooldown for a good at least 5 seconds, but it's alright. And so again here, when you're fighting a mob like this, or when I'm fighting one, I'm already trying to decide, if you run with a similar group and you're running the same key on the same week at the same level, it becomes less about, I don't know why I opened this right now to check. Probably not the best idea to do in the middle of the dungeon. But just trying to decide when to blow cooldowns. I, in my head, just think, okay, if I Dragon's Rage now, not a super efficient Dragon's Rage for these mobs. They're all really small, really squishy. I'm disintegrating some of the high ones, even just to like get him down, just because I know Pyre will do more damage to the group, but I'm just trying to kill the higher ones, so to make sure the next one starts spawning. But I extended it into this pool, which is great. You
don't have
saw
a
I
target.
just got, like, at the last second, got that rank 1 fire breath off. So it helps me extend to this pool, which makes it a little better, a little more efficient. But the real reason why I popped it on that first group is mentally I said, okay, Fortified, if I pop it now, I think it'll be up around when the boss lands.
5,
The nice thing about Bird Boss in Academy is that you get kind of like a a little cheat leeway on your prediction of, okay, when am I going to need Dragon's Rage to be up, because you can do it at the beginning, since a lot of groups just lust right on pull, and you know it's great to have it for that. But if for some reason you Dragon's Rage during these Eagles and your group just, I mean, you have a bunch of pumpers, they just deleted it. Everyone was just patting on these birds, as I am doing, because it's fun. And you get to the bird and you're like, hold up, I actually have 30 seconds left on Dragon's Rage. The bird is a little forgiving because you can just wait for Firestorm, which happens. It depends, I guess, on your group when they decide to transition. Usually, I think the normal pug thing is to do four screeches. At least, again, at this level key. As long as your healer's sort of comfortable healing it up, which is... Honestly, I always check with healers, but it seems to be more of a, to me, more of like a DPS having enough defensives mechanic, because there's plenty of time in between the screeches for the healer to heal up the DPS. I think it's more of,
5,
as long as the DPS are comfortable, they can live, 3 and 4. The healers doesn't have to really use that much to top people off in between. From a group damage perspective, I don't heal. I'm not a healer. I know the tank can take a ton of damage, so maybe that's what they're worried about. But so anyway, I have it up for pull. I believe we're going to bloodlust on pull, so that's when I'll pop it. But if you kind of miss time it a little and you don't have it up for pull, just at least you get to kind of, mentally think it's not so bad. I'll just use it during Firestorm when he takes more damage.
For you soft skins. Use them to get her attention. Huh? At least we know that works. Watch yourselves.
Here again, this is going to be this is a pretty boring boss fight. Is not boring, but not super, I guess. There's not too much to min-max as range DPS. I'm just starting my Dragon's Rage, trying to make sure I'm getting the Resonant Burst to reduce cooldown. I guess this is a good, certainly don't get Screech. Make sure this applies to this boss, but really any silence mechanic. If the silence is going out and you know you're not going to get, let's say, a Disintegrate off because you get locked, make sure you're just throwing in Azure Strike. Always look to where you could be using with Global to add a little bit more damage. In this case, during Dragon's Rage, it's not just a random Global to add a little bit more damage. It gives you an Essence Burst stack, and so it sets you up to continue extending Dragon's Rage. This Dragon's Rage, I probably should have started just full channeling
5,
earlier.
4,
Like I was watching
3,
it now,
2.
With not being in the middle of everything, I saw that I wasn't going to be able to extend it. The Eternity Surge was not going to come up with enough time for me to cast a rank 1 to extend Dragon's Rage. So I should have stopped clipping so aggressively to try to extend and just done the more standard full channels and just build up two Essence Burst stacks at the end of Dragon's Rage so that I would have them coming out of it, and just maximizing the benefit of Dragon's Rage without worrying about extend it once it's clear that you cannot extend it, if that makes sense. Obviously, I haven't really been talking about defensives. I just realized, and I meant to just offhand mention defensives during the first boss as well, during Mana Bomb. Obviously, defensives on this fight are very scripted. I think on Fortified especially, I could just not defensive the third screech at all. Maybe I do, since we have 2 charges with Obsidian skills anyway. But just definitely making sure to double defensive the 4th screech just to help the healer out. And once the fires start coming, it just becomes, make sure you don't get hit, keep DPSing, try to use hover to get good uptime on casting. So this is another, again, decision points. I think everyone that puts the time in on target dummy can learn the rotation. Some classes rotation is harder than others to, fully min-max, obviously. And I'm certainly not min-maxing of it either by any means, but I think the real difference I've noticed in my damage as I've been playing throughout the season is just cooldown management. I think at some point I might have blown a Dragon's Rage when I saw the boss at 15%, just thinking, oh God, it's a boss. Let's just get it done quicker and get out of here, and this will help the whole group. But now by holding it, I certainly would have wasted a large chunk of Dragon's Rage anyway, because we burned the boss pretty fast at the end. And now I'll have it up for these first pulls in the tree boss room, which, again, it kind of depends on what your tank likes to do. But here, again, I'm always thinking next cooldown, and when am I going to be set up for the cooldown after this next one. So, again, this pull is not super big, so I wonder if I hold it. I was assuming I would pop it, because if I pop it here, then the next half of the room will be no cooldown, and then I'll have the cooldown ready for the boss. Yeah, okay, so I do end up popping it. I was just waiting for these mobs to be grouped up. This is straight up Dragon's Rage, spamming Pyre. I haven't cast the Eternity Surge yet, probably because I'm worried about being caught in... I almost don't quit thundering there. Just worried about being caught in the cast with these detonation seeds going off. This is a pull that's just best played very, very mobile. So I kind of... If I was better at tracking, I could have probably gotten off a lot earlier, but in my head, I'm just trying to make sure don't start a long cast until right after seeds, so that you don't get caught in a seed. Here, obviously, explosions start getting crazy, so I'm helping out with Zero Strike. There's probably a bunch of places in the dungeon where I could have helped out more, but the healers seem to be on top of it, and, to the extent that the healer can, to the extent that it's not going to be super, super taxing on them or stressful or cost them the ability to heal. Unfortunately for them, it's just generally better for healers to take care of because they're less efficient at DPS. It just kind of, when you're trying to clear a dungeon as fast as you can, you need to do as much damage as you can. So they kind of get the short end of the stick on some of these kind of like group mechanic dungeons that turn into healer mechanic dungeons or affixes, but usually most healers at the higher key range, or at least 20s plus, are like they understand that they have to do it, and at lower keys it doesn't really matter who does it. Obviously, at this key it doesn't really matter. It's not, you're usually not timing a 21 solely because you didn't squeeze out every bit of DPS. It's usually mistakes or wipes or deaths or whatever. But we still make the healers do it if they're willing, just because it's more uptime for us. So here, like I said, pop Dragon's Rage on that first pull, even though I waited a bit, with the intent of not popping anything on this, so that it would be up for the boss. So, again, this will vary, but try to think of it as big pull with Dragon's Rage, hopefully small pull off Dragon's Rage while you kind of get your cooldowns back, then big pull again. That won't happen in every dungeon or with every group, but that's what you're hoping for.
Perfect. We are just about...
And this room is really fun, obviously, as Evoker. You got a ton of
too much life magic.
mega OE with Pyre spam. Those pulls weren't as good as they could have been. Partly just not great play. I was spending a lot of time moving and kind of being afraid to cast when I probably could have casted, and partly just having to help out with explosives, which is just kind of it's an annoying mechanic. So here I usually hold the Dragon's Rage, I don't want to call it padding, even though on a 21 fortified key it probably just ends up being padding, but I've noticed, depending on the pug, on the tank, on the healer, this fight actually, this sounds like mega copium for, let me pad on these ads, but if I've had wipes, since they changed this boss, since they changed the timing so the Germinate gives you plenty of time to kill this branch, gives you plenty of time to stay in the circle until the next Germinate, because I don't know how many of you guys played this boss on higher keys before those changes, but the timings were really weird. You were getting Germinates during that circle. You sometimes had trouble killing the tree that spawned in the circle before Germinate. It was crazy. He was really hard. Now the timings work out. He's otherwise pretty easy, at least at, certainly on Fortified. But the one thing that I have seen some tanks die to is those lashers and toxins stacking up. Obviously, if you have a good AoE, it's probably not going to happen. Probably more efficient to do a little more boss damage, but, we all like seeing the damage meter tick up, and this is not the most patty, the most patty pad you could do. because the lashers do need to die. So. Oh, and this is unfortunately in this video I forgot to take it. And again, since this boss is so easy now, and this was fortified, like I'm not even sure if now I would take, if I could go back, if I would take it. But usually on Academy, I like taking Cauterize because, well, it's just a 1 point flex on the left side of the tree that, you know, I usually take it off magic damage reduction or something. You can cleanse the bleed from the from this tree. That used to, at least when I was trying to do this boss, just sort of banging my head against it with a group of friends. Once it was harder, the bleed cleanse felt really nice. Now it doesn't seem almost even worth it, but Cauterize does let you cleanse the bleed on the bird boss off the tank, which on our tyrannical keys can be kind of nice for them.
I'm out of range.
It's a bleed they don't have to worry about popping a defensive 4 or calling for an external. Here again, saving Dragon's Rage for the next big pull. This is a pull of 5. This is a good place to use it. Maximizing those pyre casts. That Living Flame was a mistake because I had a burnout proc, so when I see a burnout proc, my muscles are sort of itching to use it up for the Living Flame, so the little icon disappears from my screen. But since it was a burnout proc without Leaping Flames, see, now I have a burnout proc with Leaping Flames, so it would be correct to use it. But without Leaping Flames, you're still looking at, even though it's instant, even though it's going to give you an Essence Burst during Dragon's Rage, you're still just looking at a single Living Flame. And as we know, on 3+ targets, a single Living Flame is worse than a single 0 strike. So if you don't have Leaping Flames and you get a burnout proc during Dragon's Rage, despite it being really tantalizing to hit that Leaping Flame to get rid of that burnout proc, it's actually better not to. But if you do, it's really not that big a deal, obviously, because most of your damage there is coming from those pyres that you're just firing off like a machine gun dragon. And again, this is an off cooldown pull. Still trying to do my best. My seemingly, I feel like I just went in and tail swipe for the first time in what feels like a while. I guess it was, you know, tree room. There's not really, it's not, well, obviously there's always value to CC, but tree room is not as important. The birds are just going to go flying at people right after anyway. Oh, and one thing I will say, especially if you're running with a Demon Hunter, but really any sort of long AoE CC that's kept the mobs CC'd for a while or silenced, the Demon Hunter is an easy one because the silence is so long. But usually, since the mobs are kind of all trying to cast, if you can time, or at least get ready to CC at the tail end of that, like so Sigil of Silence goes down, it's 8 seconds, 12 if you happen to get your roar down. After 8 seconds, all the mobs will be ready to cast. Literally the 8 mobs will all want to cast if they're able to. So right when the Sigil ends, they're all going to start casting. That's a great time for an AoE CC to interrupt all of them at once. Because sometimes it's hard to pick. I have an AoE CC, I have a knock up and a knock back. There's 2 casts going off. One's kind of priority to spell, the other one isn't. Like when do I use it? At the end of Sigil of Silence, at the end of some CC like that, it's just a very easy prediction. Here, I'm sure I messed up Extended Dragon's Rage because I was like 1 second off, so I don't know exactly what the issue was, but I'm sure it was the pull in timing or something. I could have used an instant instead of a cast that got clipped. This boss, especially for the dungeon, is nowhere near difficult. But I will say the breath can get tricky if you're focusing on rotation or your bomb stacks or just really trying to extend the Dragon's Rage and you just lose focus for a second. So my advice is to play this boss kind of close, unless you're very comfortable with, you know, if you're very good at mechanics and you know you'll always be ready to move and you'll manage hover to where you can just dash out of it. You know, play at 25 yards if that's where you feel most comfortable. But I've started cheating a little more melee. To be honest, this boss is one that I still sort of, I have a less firm or at least confident game plan for, because one, she's always felt kind of easy. Two, she is by design, while easy, still a little chaotic because groups kite her differently. Some people drop the bombs differently or incorrectly or too close to the group or whatever. So here we're in Dragon's Rage again, just trying to extend. Obviously, the second Dragon's Rage isn't going to be as powerful and fun because you don't have Lust. But ideally, you know, you start Dragon's Rage, you cast your 2 Empower spells. If you make it to another round of the 2 Empower spells, i.e. second Fire's Breath, second Eternity Surge, like I'm about to get off here, but tip the scales as is helpful. That's probably successful. Getting to the next Fire Breath, so Fire Breath number 3, without Lust is pretty hard, or at least proc dependent. So, yeah, that was the run. I hope some of what I said was helpful. I think I got caught up talking sometimes, and I'm sure you guys are watching and being like, why are you rambling? Why don't you just talk about this that I just saw on the screen that I noticed? Why didn't you use this spell? Why did you pop a defensive there when I pop it here? And I'm sure you guys are all right, because this is my first time doing one of these, and well, one, certainly not an expert, but two, reviewing my own play. I don't even do that sort of personally. I don't look at my own VODs in this way. I sort of look at them for, you know, where damage seemed low or where it seemed high and why that happened, but not play by play. So it actually moved a little faster than I expected, but hopefully there was something helpful in here. If you guys think these are helpful, I would certainly be willing to do them for other dungeons or other keys or fixes. I started with Academy because it seems like that's what everyone wants to watch for whatever reason. I assume it's because it's where you get like the biggest numbers, but you know, my Academies always get like way more views than anyone else. So I figured maybe if people are not just watching it for the mega tree room pulls, you know, 500k DPS, they might be watching it because they have fun doing it, but they also could use advice on it. So I figured I would do that. But yeah, let me know in the comments if it was helpful, if there were any issues. Again, I did this, I at least tried to do it just, you know, one take, watch the video as I would watch it at 1x if I was just watching it on YouTube, and try to talk through it that way. But maybe there's a better way, maybe more sort of focus segments, maybe pausing and talking about things, although that would make the video longer. You know, it's always a trade-off, but let me know if there's anything else you'd like to cover, any sort of tips or particular mechanics or evoker. We don't have that many like combos per se, or like tricky mechanics or difficult to use mechanics. Our kit is pretty straightforward, just very sort of bursty glass cannon damage, or glass cannon's the wrong word, but if there's any nuances about that that would be helpful that are not already sort of covered better by better players, better evoker players, and you know, in their rotation guides, and by all means I'm happy to talk to it from a perspective of someone who just kind of like, you know, likes running keys with friends, likes evoker, and just tries to improve without being, you know, a top player. So yeah, thanks for watching.